WhiskyCast. Proudly brought to you by Redbreast, the definitive single pot-still Irish whiskey. Join the Stillhouse at singlepotstill.com and receive an exclusive whiskey tasting journal.
Welcome to another episode of WhiskyCast HD. I'm Mark Gillespie. This time around I'm in Grimsby, Ontario at the Forty Creek Distillery. It's the last weekend of September, and that's traditionally Forty Creek's annual Whiskey Weekend. It all started in 2007 when Forty Creek founder John Hall released his first limited edition whiskey and invited his customers to come to the distillery to pick up a bottle. Today, a bottle of Forty Creek Small Batch Reserve is almost impossible to find, but it started a tradition.
Small batch was so popular that I decided, and I had been doing a few other things, so I decided that I'd bring out another limited edition the next year, that same weekend. And that one was my double barrel, when I aged it in Kentucky bourbon barrels. And it just kept growing and growing from there.
The planning for this year's Whiskey Weekend started years ago when John filled casks with what would eventually become Forty Creek Heart of Gold. But it jumped into high speed when his team filled 9,000 bottles of Heart of Gold in July. Heart of Gold was made with a winemaker's yeast instead of the traditional distiller's yeast. John took narrower cuts during distilling each of the corn, rye, and malt whiskeys that he makes to get the heart of the spirit when he blends them together.
Blending is the real art of making whiskey, and this is what John Hall really does. Now, he makes wonderful whiskeys, but he making whiskey is sort of a technical skill, or distilling it. Blending it, this is truly the art of making whiskey, and it's something that not a lot of people really have done to such a great degree of skill, with such a great degree of skill. John Hall has mastered the art of blending whiskey, so they just all work together. It's like there are many flavors, but it tastes like one whole.
Forty Creek Whiskies have won Canadian Whiskey of the Year in the Canadian Whiskey Awards for 3 straight years. But it's not the medals that bring people to Grimsby, it's the whiskey.
Got into the whiskey, discovered it, and it's a Canadian company, and as a bit of a patriot, I guess, important to support craft distillers like John and places like Forty Creek.
Well, that and the barbecue. And the music. But in the end, it's always about the whiskey.
I keep bottle number 1, yeah.
Gary Fife likes Forty Creek, but his son in Ottawa loves it. He reserved 19 bottles of Heart of Gold and sent Dad to pick up all 19 for him and his friends.
Having John sign it for the guys is great.
You get to keep any for yourself?
I did the 1 year, yeah. This year I didn't.
What makes this whiskey so unique?
I guess the taste of it, the richness of it, the smoothness of it, and everybody seems to like it.
In fact, people came from all over Canada and as far away as Texas for the Forty Creek Whiskey Weekend. The distillery is in an industrial area along the Queen Elizabeth Way that links Toronto with the U.S. border near Buffalo. But on Whiskey Weekend, it's just like a day at the park.
Quite often, whiskey festivals are held in convention halls and hotels and things like that, banquet rooms and hotels and things like that, but we hold it right at the distillery. So they get to see the barrels, they get to, walk the distillery and get to understand the process that we use for making whiskey.
C-H-A-N-T-A-N.
By the way, there's one bit of Canadian trivia hidden on the Heart of Gold bottle.
Now, do you know what the relevance of the lot number is?
Heart of Gold carries lot number 1972.
You have to assign it a lot number for excise tax purposes. But it can be any number you wish. So I picked 1972 because that's when Neil Young released Heart of Gold, his one and only #1 hit song.
And given the number of people who came to Whiskey Weekend, John Hall's remake of Heart of Gold is #1 with a bullet. For more cask-strength conversation on whiskeys, with the people who make them and the people who drink them, join us each week for WhiskyCast. In Grimsby, Ontario, I'm Mark Gillespie.